Hello, and welcome to the Santaland podcast. I created it just for you. I'm your host, Tony Felice. In each episode, I'll read to you for 10 minutes, and then we'll talk about what we just heard. Like the cricket in my story, I'll guide you through a grown-up fairy tale, one that explores ideas of existence, identity, and the soul's journey through trauma, and the transformative power of love. By the end, you'll have heard my whole story, a sneak peek into the creative process of bringing a book to life. Maybe we'll read other books together. But for now, follow the wise cricket and discover the Santaland within yourself, a place of hope, connection, and peace that's already inside of you. This podcast is especially made for those like me who feel a little different and maybe talk about math at weddings or philosophy at funerals. And like me, maybe you have a loving husband, or a wife, or somebody else that loves you. If not, we're here to love you, because you're in good company, my dear friends, here in Santaland. Welcome back to the Santaland podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. In a crazy upside-down world, I hope that you can find some quiet here and know that you are welcome and you are loved. Thank you. We're on to chapter 21, entitled Life's a Beach and Then You Try. Courage, compassion, credibility, community, curiosity, content, character, composure, circumspection. That's a whole string of high C notes. I sang them to Tom, and he heard them as memories. I'm not here to interfere, but I can validate, and that's a very powerful way to be empathetic. At this moment, I have to stay here with Tom, but I insist you go on your own with David to get to know him better. He has a role in all of this. We left him stepping out into the sunshine with the dog. See, my watch has already begun spinning faster now, and you can watch him on his way. Stepping out into the sunlight, David realized he had entered the barn earlier with a bundle of flowers, and he'd left with a bundle of nerves. Earlier that morning he'd been cleaning out the closet, and he found the cane. Ugh, that thing. The harbinger of doom, the telltale prophecy, he thought. Best to ignore it like it's not there. David was programmed to help others. No doubt about it. No one thinks of them enough, David had said matter-of-factly earlier that day at his workbench. I have an idea to start teaching them, and in return I can learn about all the tactile things that seeing people don't even notice. Tom had turned from his desk. Teach who? Blind kids. Really? Tom said. That's interesting. Tell me more. Just that... Have you ever smelled the breath of a pony? David asked. I can't say as I ever have, but I suppose I can imagine it, Tom replied. Yeah, it's like cut grass and sweet mussel smell, and dust and sun and hay, and something else I can never place. I bet a blind kid could tell me a lot of stuff I've never seen before. So, are you thinking of starting something? Tom had asked. Nothing official, he had said, a little worried that Tom might think that it might be too much of a chance for forced interaction. But David was surprised by Tom's insistence that he make it official. Tom joked and called it David's bridal. David was good with bridals. He was good with people and with stuff. He pursued the idea, and eventually a school of kids shared their own form of sight with David. He learned to see with his hands, and he listened with his heart. On a pony's snout, a little twitch that spoke more than words. He learned to hear trees and what they say. David was intrigued by the slowness of these blind children's lives and the richness of what they see that other people take for granted. It gave him the space to sit under the holly tree near the vineyards on their land and hear the wind speak to him in a voice he had not heard before. They see more than we do, Tom, he had said. I believe you, David, Tom replied. That word, believe, Such an easy word to cast out frivolously, like a run-out dish rag after its job is done. But, dearly beloved, belief is not past tense. It is an essential ingredient in Santalan. So I helped Tom, who spent a good deal of time looking back lately, stay mindful not to get lost in the prism. But let's not forget David's part in this story. What do you think happens when you begin to see with your ears? Why, you can hear me, of course. And while David did not necessarily hear my words, he heard my song. It's that ringing in your ears sometimes. That means you're on the right frequency. And so I'd chirp all day long, and David would hear me in his sort of way, and he would repeat those things in his own unique voice, and thereby cultivate belief among anyone paying attention. David sorted things, too, and quietly took his place, not with promises, but in small good works, good deeds. Tom wished there were a lot more people like David and said it often. I agreed. So over the years, I sent David opportunities, and he heard them in my song, and they formed thoughts in his head. He transmuted that energy into action. He made something of them. That's a secret, you know. Ask a question, hear an answer, take an action, and believe it to be true. But one must start with belief, because it too is a circular reference. In their day-to-day lives, David fielded calls and sorted through all the things that come in the mail, and he decided what got through and what didn't. He opened the envelopes carefully, like presents, sorting strangers into piles. The mail, the checks, the endless emails, the piles, their lives, lunches, dinners, invitations, blind kids, the dog, 1,000 small ways to express love that counteract the death by 1,000 cuts that other couples experience. David managed the parade of expectations, hell-bent on ensuring that they were no longer expectations steeped in the poison of unreasonable expectations. But David had his own work. The store in town with Claire. David was also sort of a knight. That guy that looks around corners or puts your hand on your chest before you step into the lights on a rain-slicked street. He's the fellow you want, who can be gentle and a strong arm at once. As David walked across the lawn, he waved to the men working in the garden. "How you doing, Jesse?" "I'm doing really good, thanks." He walked under the shadow of the giant magnolia to the left of the house, with a growing sense of excitement. David adjusted the leash in his hand, wishing he could just let it go, but he knew that once they got to the beach it was best to keep Brahms tethered. His cheerful face and attitude attracted people to him, just as Tom attracted people and things to Tom. "I don't like what he does to himself," David confided in Claire the day before. "We're grieving. Give it time," Claire replied. "True, he's stronger now. He started working out again," David replied. I had managed to stow away on the face of a sunflower. They were wrapping goat soaps and arranging other cheerful items on display when Claire said, "I'm sure he'll find his way soon." Out of the memory of that conversation, David opened the truck's passenger door, and Brahms made an impressive leap for a 12-year-old. David shut the door of the truck to a satisfying, heavy clunk. After entering the driver's side, he put on his seatbelt and settled into the heat of the cracked red leather. His hand stroked the steering wheel, wood and metal, shining like everything else on the inside of the truck. The outside was a mess, but the inside was neat. Sunset magazine poked out from a wedge in the door. Brahms was sitting there on the seat, tongue out and happy. David put the truck in gear, and with a groan of grinding metal things, it moved down the lane to the end of their drive. He rolled down the window and leaned on the door, skin baking his arm. They drove past the Christmas Hill Ranch sign, cheerful and newly painted. He waved to the security guard, then continued along the winding canyon, sloping downward to where the highway rippled through reality. He smiled and bounced along to a country song, whistling and enjoying how the winding road twisted downwards towards the main highway and sprawled across everything, the ocean covering the horizon. Arriving in town, he found a parking space close to the crosswalk. Have to check myself. No negative thoughts today, he said to himself. After parking, David jumped out of the truck. He took his earbuds for privacy, never realizing how precious it was until he and Tom became known by so many people. It changed the way they traveled, how they spoke, and how they carried themselves. David wrangled Brahms and headed across the highway. My God, the fighting we had to get through to get a simple crosswalk from the county, he said to the dog, who was used to David talking to him as if he were a person. He enjoyed it. Brahms barked anxiously. They walked to the corner. Wait here, David said with authority. Brahms circled him and sat at attention. The pair waited for the light to change and then started to cross. David thought, can't take that light for granted, not after the years of pleading. Slow down, look. Gee, the water looks pretty today. As David entered the crosswalk, he did not see the car rushing towards him. He stepped forward and glanced to the left in the nick of time. He started waving to give the driver attention to stop for the red light. The driver reacted to David with a middle finger. That finger was for himself. Remember that, David, he said to himself silently. David wasn't mad, but he was weary. He understood that people were busy. It's one of the things that he and Tom agreed upon, that people are people, that they are what they are. As Oscar Wilde said, people are either charming or tedious. You decide which one you are. David stepped onto the sand after descending from above on the cascading rickety wooden stairs that led their way to the beach, Barbary Avenue, at the end of their hill. David saw Kat, a neighbor. He walked towards her, thinking best to say hello. She's so sweet. Hi, Kat. How are you? Emma, Kat's toddler, ran from the shore to a sandhill and back in dirty, sandy diapers, and a shock of blonde hair surrounding a cherub face. David offered a rented smile to Kat and considered for a moment engaging in a longer discussion, but he thought better. I need a break from people right now, he thought. Still, he was happy for a distraction with someone familiar. He thought, someone who probably needs nothing from me or Tom, for a change. Kat did not know who David was. David was well liked by many people, but few knew anything really personal. I've never really thought about it. It's kind of crazy. I don't tell them anything about myself, and they like me anyway, he thought to himself. Oh, Emma, you are too cute. Mickey Mouse, Emma said matter-of-factly, the way toddlers tend to pronounce things. Yes, Mickey, we love him, David said, and he looked down at his shirt and pulled on the mouse's ear on his chest. He let go of the shirt and turned to Kat, thinking her smile is as expectant as her belly. For a second, David was self-conscious about having not removed his sunglasses, force of habit. He turned his attention back to Kat, pointing to her belly, and he said, He's getting bigger, boy, right? He is, any day now. Yes, she replied. David looked wistfully at the clouds, puffy and religious. Sure is beautiful, Kat said. It is, David offered. One more smile. They left. David picked up the bucket and picker he unconsciously brought with him, more force of habit. He spotted a candy wrapper out of place. Treasure or landfill, he said to the wind. Okay, chapter 21. Life's a beach and then you try. Much like David, my husband goes to the beach every day with the dog, takes his bucket and picker. A few years after we moved here, we discovered a gal who lives here, who's retired, who picks up trash every day off the beach. And some of us joined her as residents, and then we ended up starting a beach cleanup, and we've picked up about 3 million pieces of trash since 2019. And that's the trash we count. This philanthropy work, like so much of the philanthropy work that we do, is because of Tim, much like David, the character in the story. And what I like most about the character in this story is the same that I like about my husband, and that is his stoic nature, his ability to withstand disappointment is so much stronger than mine. He has a ability to detach. I call him Spock, and I'm Kirk, and it is really an appropriate analogy for the two of us, because I am passionate and I'm bullheaded, but I am very smart. But I sometimes get that passion sometimes get in the way, and I'm overly altruistic at times. And my husband is much more practical. He's much more realistic. He's much more diplomatic, and he is very well loved in the community that we serve. And David is a love letter to my husband, as well as to all of the people like David out there who make the world go around. Lots of people stand and shout at podiums and point at other people. Very few people stand up quietly and just get the work done that needs to be done. And he's one of those people. So we'll find out more about David in the chapters to come. And I really hope you enjoyed this one. And that is the end of this episode. Thank you so much for sticking in. Bye now.